How come we have a pathetic high school dropout here?
As my son and I were leaving a nice sushi restaurant, we came upon a classmate who despised me at school. When my son realized she was a banker, "Oh, wait a second. Hey, Dad. She was the one who was at the teller's counter at the bank we went to the other day. I remember her clearly. Let's close the $8 billion account, Dad."
What?
My name is Sebastian Harris. I'm 33 years old. I have a son. My wife is dead. My waddling young boy had grown up so quickly that he will be 15 years old this year. You might think I love my son too much. Even though I must have made him feel lonely without his mother, he grew up to be a bright young man with an honest attitude. I am very proud of my son. My late wife and I met at a small factory where I began working after dropping out of high school. She worked as a clerk and was the same age as me, as well as a high school dropout. We were the only ones our age, and most of the workers were quiet people with a craftsman's attitude. I believe it was only natural for us to become friends quickly. A few years later, in January, we turned 20 and went to submit the documents to get married. A year later, our son Samuel was born. Even though I started working early, neither of us was earning a respectable salary because we both dropped out of high school. We didn't have much money at the time, but I believe it was our happiest period as a family. 1 week before Samuel's second birthday,
It will be Samuel's birthday soon, so I have to decorate the room nicely. I have a lot of preparations to do, so I'm going shopping. You stay at home with Samuel, okay?
With that, my wife went out with a smile on her face. An hour later, my cell phone rings. I believed it may be the wrong number, so I answered it and was informed that my wife had been killed by a truck driver. After that, I went to the police, handled the funeral, and so on. I had primarily left child rearing to my wife, but suddenly, I had to do everything myself. To be honest, I was so preoccupied that I didn't have time to cry, and I recall very little of that period. A few days after I said goodbye to my wife, Samuel started to look for her.
Mom? Mom?
It was understandable because he was too young to realize his mother had died. Samuel thoroughly inspected the house, repeatedly opening closets in the bathroom, but she was nowhere to be found. This went on for a while, and we spent a hard and unhappy period together, but I never stopped loving my son. That, I believe, contributed to the strengthening and deepening of my relationship with my son. At the time, I had left home for a factory with a dormitory instead of graduating from high school for some reason. I would have been happy anywhere as long as I could sleep in a dormitory. The factory where I got a job had more common sense than I had imagined and did not make me work excessive hours as a minor of 15 years old. Still eager to learn, I often went to the library, which was a 5-minute walk from the dormitory. It was one of my lucky chances to meet Jack, who worked as a librarian at the library. He was retired, but he used to be a high school teacher. He saw me reading an old high school textbook. Initially, he offered me specific recommendations for books that were easy to understand and showed me how to study. I first met Jack in late April. He was so impressed with my daily study in the dormitory and my constant visits to the library that he began to teach me more advanced and broader content. And when I turned 18, he suggested I take the GED test.
Sebastian, given your ability and will to study, it would be a tragedy to let you continue in this manner. You should definitely take the GED test.
I've struggled with money since I was a child, and it's always been difficult for me. But it also piqued my interest in the movement of money and how the economy functions. Jack was also a man of many interests and an erudite man. He not only taught me subject matter, but also varied useful knowledge about the world condition and the economy.
Last time, I recommended taking the GED test, but if you have a desire to learn professionally, you should definitely go to a university.
He gave me another push. My wife and I had been dating for several years at that time, and I was preparing to leave the dorm and start a family. Jack's suggestion that I go to college was a dream come true for me. I believed that I still had a long life ahead of me, and that one day I would be able to pay to attend college. After Samuel was born, I worked overtime to support my family. I had even less time for work, cleaning, and childcare after my wife died, and I had almost no time to study. 24 hours a day was not enough. I wish I had another me. I can't tell you how many times I tried to escape from reality. I dropped Samuel off at daycare and headed to work one morning, but my legs didn't move as quickly as I wanted them to, and I ended up sitting on a bench in front of the library. What am I doing? I have to go to work. Just when I was thinking that, a voice called out to me from behind.
Hey, Sebastian, is that you? What are you doing here at this time of hour?
I turned around to see Jack standing there with a kind face. Jack knew everything and always helped me with my studies. He provided me with excellent counsel when I had challenges, made me laugh at times, and was my life mentor. I guess Jack's calm and receptive nature made me feel relaxed. I told him my life story with tears streaming down my face. Jack listened to my story carefully and nodded his head without making a disgusted face. My parents were both alcoholics, and violence was a constant throughout my life. I was always injured in some way and always hungry. My parents were uninterested in me. They never washed my laundry, the public utilities were cut off, and I couldn't take a bath. My classmates despised me because my body was always filthy. Teachers mocked or disregarded me, and I was never recognized as a student. By the time I started junior high school, I was compelled to work part-time while concealing my true age. My parents took away all the money I earned from my part-time job. On the night of my graduation ceremony, after my parents had passed out, I secretly gathered my possessions and ran away. I've been living like this for more than 10 years, but I went away from my parents because I couldn't live like that any longer. Following that, I met someone I cared about, married, and had a wonderful child. Finally, I thought I finally had a life and happiness like other people. I don't have what others take for granted. How come this is only happening to me? As I sobbed, Jack, who had been silently listening to me, gave me a tight hug.
Don't say that. You've done a great job so far. You are a great father, and I'm sure your son will be proud of you. Personally, I respect you as a person.
I cried even more when he said that to me. After a while, I calmed down and Jack apologized to me.
As a former teacher, what you said was painful to hear. Let me apologize on behalf of those teachers who failed to guide you. I'm really sorry. I've been putting off telling you about something else because I believed it might be none of my business. After a while of crying away my sorrows, I responded to Jack's advice because I recognized him as an adult on whom I could rely. I'll do it, I answered immediately and with great enthusiasm. Okay. I'm glad to hear that.
Jack smiled, perhaps relieved to see me. One day, Samuel and I had come to a familiar sushi restaurant. I instantly remembered the old days as I filled my tummy and felt happy. A lot had happened, but it had already been 10 years since then. No wonder Samuel had grown up. As I was deep in thought, Samuel came out of the sushi restaurant with me and looked up at me with an innocent, childish face.
What's wrong, Dad?
Well, I realized that you've grown up. You asked for wasabi today. I could not eat wasabi when I was young. I couldn't eat sushi or sashimi as a child, so I rarely had the opportunity to try wasabi. I got a job when I was 15, and with my first paycheck, I ate a pack of sushi from the supermarket for the first time. I put a lot of wasabi on it, and I was so surprised that it hit me right in the nose. I couldn't eat wasabi for a while after that. Well, I got over it before I knew it. When I told him about my recollections of wasabi while teasing him, Samuel, who wanted to believe he was all grown up, was quite intrigued by it.
I see. But I'm an adult now. From now, I'll always ask for wasabi. Sushi tastes so much better with wasabi. Today's tuna was great too.
I couldn't help but smile at his amusing remark. It was remarkable how many kids these days are so mature, but I was trying to keep Samuel as innocent as possible. However, several incidents turned him into a gourmet. I chuckled and said, I'm glad to hear that it tasted very well, but teenagers should eat stimulants in moderation. That was all I told him. As I was walking home, I heard a high-pitched voice behind me.
Hold on a second. How come we have a pathetic, filthy high school dropout here? I came here to eat delicious sushi, but now I feel like shit.
I looked at the person who said that and saw a woman frowning at us. The face and voice appeared and sounded faintly familiar, but I couldn't place her. I frowned too. She pointed at me and said loudly to the women around her, who appeared to be her co-workers.
He is a high school dropout who went to the same middle school as me. He was too poor and stupid to finish high school. He never bathed and smelled bad, and his clothes were always tattered and dirty. Why are you in front of this fancy sushi restaurant? Did you borrow money to come here to eat?
As I listened to her story, I started to remember her too. Her name was Isabella Scott. We went to school together from elementary to high school. Due to the damaged home environment, the first part of my school years were horrible. But what bothered me the most was my classmates' constant exclusion of anyone who was not like them. Isabella Scott, in particular, was the leader of the girls. She was a pretty girl with good grades and a solid family background, and her parents worked for a large bank in Miami. But she was also the first to despise me. I never wanted to recall her, but I never expected to be reminded of her there. I felt horrible too. In primary school, the vast majority of students still simply did what their parents told them to do. However, in junior high school, it became more difficult since kids began to form their own subjective opinions. Whenever she couldn't find her stuff,
My eraser is missing. I'm sure that poor thief stole it.
and if the floor was dirty,
Hey! This place is dirty. Dirty people are making the classroom dirty.
she would blame me, and all of my classmates would join in the commotion, making me feel out of place. Of course, I was determined not to do anything criminal. Except for a part-time job I held in junior high when my parents forced me to lie about my age, I've never looked away and have led a straight life. I was ready to be transported back to my gloomy school days, when the warmth of our clasped hands brought me back to my senses. Oh yeah, I have Samuel. I'm not alone anymore. I have to be strong.
Hey, Dad.
That old lady has been staring at us for quite some time, and she's talking about someone who dropped out of high school. Is she talking about you? Isabella didn't miss Samuel's comment, and now she changed the target to him.
Huh? Did you refer to me as old lady? I'm still young. Anyway, heredity is really cruel and frightening thing. If a parent is an idiot who dropped out of high school, the child will be an idiot too. I can tell. I can see that he is brainless, and he has a miserable face. I feel sorry for you. You're so much like your father. I'm sure you were born to the wrong family.
She looked at other women around her and laughed at me. I didn't care what they said about me. I didn't mind if they mocked me as much as they wanted, since I didn't want to deal with them. But when they made fun of my precious child, I couldn't ignore it. I'm sorry, Samuel. I'm sorry I made you worry. And you should never refer to a woman you don't know as old. She has always been a little strange. Listening to her, I'd say time probably stopped when she was in middle school. I always say, it's what's inside that counts, right? Unfortunately, she doesn't have anything significant on the inside. When I informed Samuel clearly, Isabella grew enraged and began screaming hysterically.
What did you just say? Say it again. You're just a poor, ugly, filthy high school dropout. Why are you acting so cocky?
Isabella's remark turned Samuel off, but he seemed to sense something, looked up at me, and made a serious suggestion.
Oh, wait a second. Hey, Dad. That old woman, she was the one who was at the teller's counter at the bank we went to the other day. Because the position of the mole on her cheek, the color of her fingernails, and her voice are identical. I remember them so clearly. And I also recall this horrible smell of her perfume. I'm scared of a bank with a crazy person. What if she uses our money without our permission, Dad? We just deposited $8 billion, but let's transfer it to another bank.
What? $8 billion?
After Isabella screamed, a man came running up to them.
I'm sorry, guys, for being late. The manager stopped me when I was leaving. He always goes on and on. Well, let's go inside. It's already time for reservations.
Isabella and the other ladies were facing me and Samuel. When he spotted Samuel, the man who had noticed the delicate vibe glanced at both of us and grinned happily.
Ah, I know you. You are Samuel, right? I always watch your videos on how to make more money. I'm so grateful to you. I watch your videos with my son because they are so easy to understand. Since my son started watching your videos, he has been saving seriously and not wasting money. Last month, his savings exceeded $500, and he gave me and my wife a bouquet with the money. I was so happy I secretly cried. It's all thanks to you, Samuel. I appreciate it.
Words of gratitude from him made Samuel smile.
What? Are you watching my videos? I'm the one who wants to thank you. I'm going to upload a video about stocks tonight at 7:30 p.m., so please check it out.
While Samuel was promoting his videos, I smiled at them. I never thought I'd meet a viewer in town. Isabella cut me off just as I was thinking how great it was to hear about this experience.
What's going on? What's all this talk about how to make money in stocks?
Then, the man started talking with a surprised look on his face.
Wait a minute. Don't you know him? He's a popular guy right now. Samuel is a prodigy who studied the majority of famous economic texts before starting primary school. I reasoned that if a child could grasp it, so could I. So I purchased and read the economic books he advised. But I couldn't understand a word of it. which reinforced my admiration for Samuel's brilliance. And I've been watching his videos for fathers to engage in various economic activities with his own pocket money.
Isabella responded to the man's explanation with a smile and a confused expression.
Oh, okay. So, video distribution, huh? I'm sorry. I don't know much about that kind of thing.
In one of the videos, Samuel plays the role of a teacher, and his father plays the role of a student who knows nothing about it. The fact that his father is actually a lecturer in the economics department became a topic of conversation.
When the man added, Isabella was again taken aback.
What? Are you saying that Sebastian is the lecturer in the economics department?
Her reaction was so funny that I had to hold back my laughter.
Seriously? That can't be true. You've got to be kidding me. He's probably just lying to get more views on his video. I know that he's a loser who dropped out of high school.
While Isabella was pointing at me and insisting, the man simply dropped Isabella's finger and then asked me,
A high school dropout? No. According to what I've heard, he graduated from the university where he lectures. I don't remember which university though. Isabella, you must be mistaken. Am I correct?
With all of my acquired thoughts, I said proudly, Yes, you know very well of me. I went from H University of Economics to graduate school for graduate studies. Samuel, standing next to me, also looked somewhat proud.
I plan to go to the same place someday too. Right now, my dream is to study at the same university as my dad.
I liked how he freely proclaimed his dream without being asked.
No way! This must be a lie. I don't believe you. I can't believe you're talking such lies despite being an adult. It's terrible that you're acting so arrogant despite your poverty.
The man sighed at Isabella, who was trembling and muttering with a pale face.
What are you talking about? You probably aren't aware, but Samuel's channel is rapidly expanding and has a large amount of subscribers. I believe it was in the top 10 of this year's channel subscriber ranking, right? He's got sponsors and he's published a book. And his account balance is more than that of a successful celebrity. Oh, wait a second.
The man who was about to say this suddenly stopped and glared at Isabella.
Tell me something. I hope I'm wrong, but were you messing with them like this the whole time?
Not only Isabella, but also the women around her looked away from the man awkwardly.
I am very sorry.
I assumed that this man was the type who could get the work done quickly. He immediately apologized to us. I was outraged at first, but I was also happy to be able to tell Isabella that I wasn't the same person I used to be. So I stood firm and said, It's okay. That won't be necessary. Here, people are watching us. I still have an appointment later, so excuse me. With that, I quickly walked away with Samuel. Of course, the man followed us and refused to go until we set another appointment for another day. He was very eager to work, even though he was out of his office. The bank manager and Leo, the man from that time, arrived to my house a few days later at 1 p.m. with a gift. To be more specific, it wasn't my home because we were staying at the home of a man named Ezra. When we started living in Ezra's house, I was worried that Samuel could not get along with Ezra or open up to him, but that wasn't the case. They quickly became as close as grandfather and grandson, and I also enjoyed spending time with the three of them because there was nothing I had to worry about. I offered to rent the room, but Ezra gladly accepted.
Sure, no problem. We have plenty of room, so you can use it as you like. I'm single and I'm getting old, so I never know when I might get sick or fall ill at home. It's always good to have someone around if something like that happens. I'd be delighted to have you here.
Isabella's father was John, the branch manager who came to our house with Leo. John deeply apologized to us.
Sebastian, the other day, not only did one of our employees behave very rudely, but she also said horrible things about your upbringing. As a person in charge, I sincerely apologize for this unforgivable act.
Leo was apologizing too. As I froze in amazement, the branch manager, possibly fearing his apology wasn't sufficient, began to kneel. Leo followed suit and got down on his knees. I hurriedly helped them up and sat them down on the sofa. "Hey, what do you think you're doing? Please, don't do that." John opened his mouth. He was going to talk about our deposit.
So, about your deposit in our bank?
"Oh, I know you are here to discuss it. As far as I'm concerned, I have no intention of doing anything unless there's some big scandal that makes the bank itself suspicious, so you don't have to worry about it." When I said that, they looked relieved. Isabella, on the other hand, had been suspended from work and would be working in-house in a department unrelated to customer information. I thought they made the right decision for the future of the bank. Now that the cause of the incident was over, we chatted peacefully for a while. John began to speak as Isabella's father, perhaps as a gesture of conclusion, or perhaps because I was Isabella's classmate.
Our daughter, Isabella, was the first girl for my wife and I that we had been waiting for a long time. She is the youngest of all. It may not be good to mention this here, but she was so cute and adorable. We had spoiled her a lot more than our 3 older sons, and that was a mistake. I bought her everything she wanted, and when she was in a bad mood, we would try to put her in a good mood. And it wasn't all. She got good grades, and I think she was not bad looking, but her job search didn't go well at all. The interviewers must have seen right through her personality. Whenever she received a rejection letter, she would drink, get drunk, and act out. I couldn't stand to see her like that, so I brought her into our bank. But that didn't do her any good either. The job hunting was supposed to be an excellent opportunity. It was a chance to make her reflect on what was the cause of her rejection. And yet, as usual, I had reached out to her so readily to assist her.
Saying that, John bit his lip.
I should have done more to empower my child to think for herself and advocate for herself, just as Jack did for you.
When John said that, I couldn't help but ask him, "Wait a minute, did you say Jack? Do you know him?" John smiled and told me about an unexpected connection I didn't know about.
Yes, a few years ago, I happened to meet Jack in front of the station. At that time, Jack told me about you, Sebastian.
My homeroom teacher when I was a student was Jack. When I was devastated by the death of my wife, he supported me. One day, he made a proposal to me. I told him that I didn't want to go to work. I knew there were many people who could replace me, so I wanted to quit. But I knew that if I quit, Samuel and I wouldn't be able to live, and I didn't have any savings. As I whined, Jack offered me a job.
I know a guy, a retired professor. His name is Ezra. How about taking care of Ezra's personal needs? That house is big and I think you two could live in it. He doesn't have any relatives nearby, so I suggested he go into a nursing home, but he didn't want to. When I went to check on him before, he sighed and said he wished he had a housekeeper. Jack added some more information. He's a former college professor and likes to teach, so I'm sure he can help you with your studies when he's available. And since he is a little hard of hearing, I'm sure he doesn't mind if Samuel plays around. It's a quiet environment, so I guess it's good for the kids' education.
I sobbed again because I thought he truly cared about me. Sunday of the week when I heard that from Jack. Since Jack was free that day, The three of us, including Samuel, visited Ezra's house. Ezra was about 80 years old, but he was an energetic person who did not seem to show his age. At first, I was worried if he was a difficult person, but Samuel was not shy around him, and he was a genius with a quick mind.
What a genius with a quick mind!
With that, he immediately loved Samuel. The conversation went smoothly, and Samuel and I decided to live at Ezra's house. The next day, I called the factory and officially quit my job. The factory manager spoke to me kindly at the end, and I almost cried.
Well, I hoped that during this rest period, your thoughts would change a little bit. But you're still young, and I know you have a lot of things you want to do. Good luck. I'll always support you. If you have any problems or concerns, don't hesitate to contact me.
Yes, thank you so much for all the help you've given me. I appreciate it. I was blessed to be able to work hard at housework, study, and raise my child. I took the entrance exam for H University, which I had secretly hoped to attend after passing the GED test. I earned a scholarship to attend school, worked in a laboratory to assist a professor, and successfully completed my graduation thesis. With Ezra's support, I did not stumble even once during my school days. By the time I finished my thesis, Ezra was amused by Samuel's brilliance and began broadcasting recordings of him. When I told Samuel I was going to graduate school and accepting a part-time teaching position, he smiled and replied,
Seriously, Dad? Are you going to be a lecturer? I'd love to take your class.
It had been a long time since I had taught, so I attempted to practice a lesson with Samuel, but I was severely scolded.
Dad, I don't think it's a good idea to teach like that. I'll explain it more clearly.
Samuel said he'd give me an example, so I pretended to be a student and listened to his lecture. I was taking a video at this time as well, but it was not for distribution, just as a memory. However, I didn't expect his first class to be so good. Ezra said,
It would be a shame not to distribute it.
So I distributed it, and in no time it had over 1 million views. The smoothness of the scene and flow, as well as the popularity of the video, made Ezra amused once more and inspired him to create a video series. Samuel's videos have since been shown on variety shows and nightly newscasts. It also resulted in the development of a book for youngsters that explained the economy in simple terms. With the term elementary school investor, Samuel rose to fame and popularity. I can't believe the days when I was working at a factory and living on a shoestring. We had been blessed with so many people who had helped us. When I talked about this to John, he quietly began to speak.
To be honest, I knew what kind of environment you were living in when you were living in our neighborhood.
I huffed and my body tensed up.
As an adult, I'm ashamed, and I couldn't do anything about it. But I can't interfere with what happens in other people's homes. If you had asked for help and no one was willing to take on the task, I was going to help. That's what I was thinking. But you disappeared. I guess your will to survive was stronger than my desire to help. But even so, there are not many times when a child is thrown out into the world and is safe. I should have taken the initiative instead of waiting. But I regretted that it was too late.
Because of these unexpected statements, I was unable to speak and was forced to remain silent.
I didn't tell my daughter, who was a child at the time, about the details. I told her to look out for you, but I guess she didn't like that. She might have asked why I, her father, was caring for someone else rather than her. I believe it was around the time my daughter was in high school that I learned about what she had done to you and scolded her promptly. I tried to correct her. At the time, she apologized sincerely, but the fact that she hasn't changed over the years,
It may be a problem with her personality. I couldn't find any words to say to John, who was disappointed. The room was filled with a somber atmosphere. The atmosphere in the room was very awkward. So to change the subject, I asked him about something that had been bothering me. By the way, how are my parents doing?
They moved away soon after you left that house. The house was torn down and now the land has been cleared.
That's what he told me. I guess they were afraid that I would tell on them. In any event, I believed there had to be a reason why they hadn't contacted me, despite the fact that Samuel and I were famous. I didn't care about my parents and didn't want to go out of my way to find them. I don't think I need to think about it until the time comes. They didn't raise me properly, but I'm grateful to them for giving birth to me, so I'm not going to judge them harshly. John glanced at his watch.
Well, we should be going. I'm really sorry for what happened.
And they left. After seeing them off, I went outside for a short walk and reflected on my own past and present relationships. I was a dirty kid without money or wisdom. To be honest, what Isabella told me was not wrong. My parents didn't love me. My classmates didn't like me. Adults ignored me, and I was lonely my entire life. I was at the bottom of the social ladder, but I was aware that some people were attempting to reach out to me. Looking back, I despised my parents, classmates, teachers, and the grown-ups around me. That's why the idea of seeking help from adults didn't occur to me. Maybe that's how trapped I was. If I hadn't been so entrenched that I couldn't trust anyone, I'm sure I'd have vanished by now, just like my parents. Even though our time together was short, it began with a touch of kindness and sincerity of my late wife. And I gained Samuel, who was trusting me with all his heart. That's how I was able to live with human emotions again. Come to think of it, I have spent more time with Samuel than with my wife. Then there were people like Jack and Ezra. I can honestly say that the fantastic interactions I've had with wonderful people who have given me their affection without expecting anything in return have been valuable, fortunate cards in my life. I thought my life was full of despair, but before I realized it, it was full of so many valuable things. When I looked up at the sky, I noticed a rainbow, possibly because it had stopped raining earlier. I expressed my gratitude to my wife, who had gradually faded from my memory over time. Thank you. I decided to go home. As I reached the house, I heard Samuel and Ezra inside laughing and playing a game. I closed the door slowly, listening to their laughter.
I live in a small apartment with my 7-year-old daughter, Ava. My ex-husband and I divorced 5 years ago. The reason was domestic violence. Before we married, I had noted that he had a nasty temper at times, but my love for him was stronger. I didn't expect things to become so bad that he'd raise his hand to me. I still have scars from the injuries caused by my ex-husband, and it hurts me to remember them sometimes. But Ava was the one positive thing about being married to my ex-husband. Thankfully, my ex-husband never struck Ava, and she grew up to be a nice, smart, and gentle girl. One day, just before Ava came home from elementary school, her homeroom teacher called me. Actually, Ava got into a fight with a girl in her class today. I was very surprised by her words. Ava was a very nice girl, and even if she had had a negative experience, she would never tell anyone about it. The other child was not injured, but Ava got a big scratch on her cheek. Ava didn't tell the teacher about the cause of the fight, and she just apologized to me over the phone. I should apologize on behalf of my daughter. I hung up the phone and waited for Ava to return. What on earth could have made Ava so angry? A few minutes later, Ava returned, and just as her teacher said, she had gauze on her cheek. "There you are, Ava." When I greeted her, Ava smiled as usual and said, "I'm home." With that, she went to leave her school bag in her room. Ava entered the living room after washing her hands and gargling. "What happened to your cheeks?" I asked. Ava looked away from me and said, "I tripped." As far as I knew, that was the first lie Ava had ever told me. I was trying not to hurt Ava's feelings. "I just got a call from the teacher. Did you really have a fight with your friend?" I asked her. Ava looked puzzled and fell silent. "I wish you'd tell me what made you feel so bad." When I said this, Ava finally looked up to talk to me. Then she went back to her room and brought a picture. "This is you." It was a picture of a smiling woman in a colorful field of flowers. "You drew wonderful, thank you." I took the picture, but Ava continued. "Because Father's Day is coming up, we had to draw a picture of our daddy today." Hearing Ava's words, I immediately felt sorry for her, because I realized how lonely Father's Day was for Ava, who didn't have a father. Then Mila commented that it was strange for me to draw a picture of my mommy on Father's Day. I told her that I drew a picture of my mom, whom I love because I don't have a daddy. She said the reason my daddy is not here is because mommy and daddy had a fight. Mila told me that she felt sorry for me because I don't have a daddy, but that it was mommy's fault that this happened. I could not deny those words. I was the one who took Ava away from her father to protect myself. That was the truth. But Ava soon dispelled those thoughts. "I'm not sorry for myself. Even if daddy is gone, I still have you. Mila doesn't know you, so that's why her comments bothered me. You're the best mommy." Before Ava could finish, she was shedding tears. Ava was upset not because she had been mocked, but because her friends had spoken negative things about me. "Ava, thank you." I hugged Ava as she shed tears. I thought Ava was still a young girl, but she grew into a powerful child who could understand other people's emotions and became upset if they were insulted. I was very happy about that, and I was so embarrassed when I discovered I was the polar opposite of her as a child. Like Ava, I also grew up in a mother-daughter household. But I could not speak kind words to my mother like Ava did. My mother and father divorced when I was in the 4th grade of elementary school. My mother never told me why, and I still don't know. I have no idea what happened between them. But at least to me, my father was kind, amusing, and charming, and I adored him. So I could not immediately accept the sudden loss of my father. I couldn't be honest with my mother, and as I progressed through middle and high school, I became increasingly hostile to her. I didn't spend much time at home at night and resented my mother, who was concerned about me. When I was in high school, You must have had a bad upbringing because you didn't have a father. That explains your negative attitude. When my classmates said that to me, I took it out on my mother. It's all your fault that you made me like this. Still, my mother did not get angry with me. I'm sorry. She simply said so. My father and mother split due to marital problems, and it was never solely my mother's responsibility. Now that I've been through divorce, I understand. But I couldn't think that way at that moment. I settled down in my senior year of high school and started looking for a job. I didn't have the money to go to college, and I wanted to be independent as soon as possible. My mother constantly urged me to get a higher education. Finally, I found work as an office worker at a daycare center. The pay was not very large, but I was so content to be able to live on what I made that I didn't notice anything else. But it turned out that my mother was suffering from an illness. By the time I realized it, it was too late. My mother was diagnosed with an incurable condition and informed she had little time left to live and would have to spend the remainder of her life in the hospital. I eventually grew to regret what I had done to my mother. I went to see her every day after work to make up for my faults and spend as much time as possible with her. My mother was startled at how my attitude had changed as a rebellious daughter, yet she looked pleased to see me. I tried to act as cheerful as possible so that my mother would not be anxious. But one day, I couldn't control my feelings. You did your best, but all I did was rebel. And I was a terrible daughter. I'm really sorry. I said this with tears in my eyes. But my mother looked calm. It's okay. I'll be happy with anything as long as you're alive and well. You're still my daughter, no matter what. She told me so. For the first time, I knew how much my mother had always loved me. And I knew it was too late to realize that. I had no idea how vital it was to have someone who unconditionally loves you. I was feeling very bad. Then my mother gave me something. After you, this is the second most valuable thing I have. It was a beautifully polished jewelry box. I want you to have it. Hearing my mother's words, I opened the box and found a ring inside. It was an antique ring with a smooth, shiny gemstone. Thank you. I will treasure it. My mother passed away 3 days after she gave me the ring. I never wore it because I thought it was too valuable, but I still gaze at it now and then to get power from it. My mother did her best, so I will do my best too. I will do everything to protect Ava. I can feel that way. One day, however, something unexpected happened. It was the end of the month, and I was preparing to withdraw my ex-husband's child support payment as usual. The money that was supposed to be there was not in the account. When we divorced, we decided that I would not charge him alimony, but that my ex-husband would pay child support for raising Ava. I guess he didn't put it up as a direct debit, or perhaps he simply forgot to transmit the funds. Thinking so, I called my ex-husband, who I rarely call. However, The number you have dialed is currently not in use. In my ears, a monotonous mechanical sound resonated. What? My mind went blank. I'd been working at the same daycare center since I graduated from high school, but my pay was still poor. Even with child support from my husband, I was still struggling to make ends meet. From that moment forward, I knew that materials and events at my daughter's school would become increasingly expensive. We lived on a very tight budget for a month, hoping that there was some kind of mistake. However, at the end of the next month, the child support was not transferred to my account. I didn't know my ex-husband's current address, nor did we have any mutual acquaintances. I had no way of contacting his parents as they seemed to have moved out of the area. And as for child support, it was an informal agreement over which I had no legal jurisdiction. He escaped. I felt ashamed of myself and was at a loss. We could never afford expensive meals, but our meals had become even more economical than before. But Ava's reaction didn't change. "It's delicious!" She ate with a smile on her face. Her smile saved my life, but I had to do something to protect it. My impatience grew stronger and stronger. And when Ava came home with a hole in her sneakers, I felt limited in my ability to even willingly buy her shoes. "Mommy, I'm sorry." I was forced into a situation where I had no choice but to choose the method that came to my mind, but that I wanted to avoid if possible. It was to sell my mother's memento ring. It was antique, and I had no idea how much it was worth, but what was on top was a genuine gemstone. I was hoping to earn enough money to buy shoes for Ava. With this hope, I went to a neighborhood pawn shop. It was a ring that my mother had treasured. I didn't really want to sell it. "Mother, I'm sure you'll understand. You would tell me to protect my daughter." I told myself that and handed the ring to the mail clerk at the pawn shop. At that moment, my hand seemed to be shaking. "Are you sure about this?" the staff asked me. I couldn't answer right away. "Yes, please," I replied. I am my mother's daughter, but I am Ava's mother too. This is the best choice. I told myself so. "Okay, let me take a look," he said quietly and looked at the ring with a small loop. How long had it been? 10 minutes? Probably longer than that. The staff looked at the ring silently. I was astonished to observe the staff's expression as I questioned how such a process could take so long. Tears were welling up in his eyes. "Huh? What's wrong?" The staff seemed to come to his senses when he heard my voice. "Oh, I'm sorry." He dried his tears with a Kleenex and took out what appeared to be a form to fill out. "May I ask your name?" he asked me. "I'm Emily Thompson." With that, he gently put down the pen he was holding without filling anything out. Then, with a deep sigh, he slowly shifted his gaze to me. "May I ask you something?" he asked. I was very worried that I had done something very wrong. "Sure." "Where did you get this?" "Well, it was my mother's memento. She gave it to me just before she passed away, saying that she wanted me to have it because it was very precious to her. Saying those words made my heart ache a little again, but I couldn't change my mind.
I see.
After a short silence, he said,
Could you please give me a minute?
And he went to the back of the store. Then he came back immediately and took out a ring from a small jewelry box.
Actually, I have a very precious ring that I inherited from my late brother.
I was very surprised when I saw the ring that he took out. It was so similar to the ring my mother had given me.
My brother was a jewelry craftsman, but he got sick when he was still in his 20s. He passed away 20 years ago. However, when he realized he only had a short time left to live, he put in more effort than usual to create something. They were 2 rings, one for his wife and the other to his only daughter.
After he said that,
Have you ever seen the inner surface of your mother's ring?
He asked me. Yes, I have. My mother's name was engraved in small letters on the inside. Hearing my words, he handed me another ring. Puzzled, I looked at the ring and saw, "For Emily." That was what was engraved on the ring. No way. I looked at him with half a doubt.
Yes, that's right. This is the ring my brother made for you, his daughter, at the end of his life.
What? My father? But I couldn't comprehend. How could such an amazing coincidence have occurred? My mother informed me she was divorced, but she never mentioned my father's illness. And I had never once heard that my father was a jewelry artisan. I was confused, but he kept talking.
It's no surprise you didn't know about it when you were a little girl, because my brother was both an office worker and a jewelry craftsman. Our family had owned a small jewelry store and pawn store for generations. I didn't have the talent that my brother did, so I no longer did jewelry and only pawn. But after my brother found out about his illness, he didn't inform his young daughter about it. He said he was going to move out to work, when in reality, he was hospitalized. He and his wife had discussed and decided to call it a divorce because he didn't want his daughter to be sad in the event of his death.
Hearing those comments, I remembered my mother abruptly telling me that they had split, despite the fact that my father had never returned from his single-person assignment. I see. Tears welled up in my eyes as I remembered my father's warm grin from my childhood.
After he finished making 2 rings, my brother had hesitated to give them. He was afraid they'd tie up your lives after he died. However, his wife wanted it, so he gave it to her. But my brother had decided not to give it to you. He didn't want to be a stumbling block when the new father came along. However, he asked me to give you this ring in case I saw you when you grew up. I couldn't stop the tears from falling out of my eyes. I had no idea. I didn't know anything about the love from my father and mother for me. With my father gone, I felt no more loved than I would have been in a household with both parents, or so I thought. But I was wrong. He cared for me so much. I'm sure he thought a lot about me and worried a lot for me. Because my brother was a well-known craftsman among a certain group of people, the value of this ring would be quite high. What you do with it is up to you. That is my brother's wish.
When I left the store, the ring that was 1 when I arrived had become 2.
Please take your time to think about it again.
I bowed deeply and left the pawn shop. What shall I do after this? How shall I protect Ava? I was thinking about it, but I couldn't bring myself to sell the 2 rings that had come to me. Since then, another 20 years have passed. Ava, this is the most valuable thing I have beside you. Tomorrow, I will gift Ava, who is getting married, a ring that belonged to my mother. What a beautiful ring! But it's a memento of my grandmother's, isn't it? Are you sure? Ava was surprised. Yes, it is. It's a precious good luck charm that will protect you. I owe my life a lot to that ring. I'm sure it will protect you too. When I said that, I see. Thanks. So, when I have a daughter, I will pass it down to her as well. Ava answered me with her usual smile. Since that day at the pawn shop, I have been thinking of ways to protect Ava without selling the rings. I couldn't change occupations because I only had a high school diploma. I broke out of my shell and worked hard to find a new job. As a result of my determination, I was transferred to a corporation with a career track position. I managed to send Ava to college. The 2 rings are now in Ava's hand and mine. The love between parent and child contained in these 2 rings will be passed down to the next generation. That's what I believe.